Hey everyone, so today I wanted to talk to you about an idea that I have regarding borderline personality disorder and what it can feel like. And I've been struggling with articulating my thoughts and feelings regarding this. Just a quick backstory. Last summer, I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder by two different doctors. And I've also had two different therapists diagnose me with bipolar 1. And I was reading this book, and it was talking about how you can absolutely have more than one diagnosis. I mean, I also have PTSD. So uh, here we are. Over a year and a half later of getting those initial diagnoses and being very confused, and then finding a little bit of clarity with just a little bit of research and help. You can have both. And I was trying to articulate my thoughts and feelings regarding borderline personality disorder and what that feels like. And I've been struggling with that. But I have an idea that I want to share with you guys today because I can't get it out of my head. But before I tell you my idea that entails borderline personality disorder and like what that feels like, I have to first tell you of another idea. And this is actually an idea that came from a friend years ago. Years ago, when I was still living in Los Angeles, California, I met up with a friend for coffee. And we were talking about possibly collaborating on some projects, and we never did. But he told me about this idea that comes from philosophy. It actually comes from, who is it? Frank Jackson, the story of Mary's Room. So, sorry. This idea is very personal to me, so this is kind of hard to talk about. Um, Ever since I heard about Mary's Room, I'm like, I feel like her. That's me. That's who I am. But let me explain. Let me explain why. And again, if this doesn't make sense, if this analogy does not make sense, then we can just leave it. If it does hit home to some of you guys, I would love to hear from you and explore this idea even further. But so before I can tell you about my idea with borderline personality disorder, let me talk to you first about Mary's Room and what does that mean? What is that? If you've never heard of the concept of Mary's Room before, Mary is a scientist who lives in a black and white world. She studies and she knows everything about the color red. Everything. Everything about the color red. She could tell you anything about the color red. She could tell you about the origins of red, the different shades of red, the history behind red. She could tell you, this girl loves the color red. This girl is all about the color red. It's all she studies. It's all she knows. However, she lives in a black and white world. She lives in a black and white world. She's never seen the color red. She's never experienced it before. So here's where the conundrum is. Like, how can someone know something? How can someone really say they know something if they've never experienced it before, right? One day, her door opens. The black and white world is shattered because the door opens. She walks through it and she steps outside and she sees the color red. She sees it for the first time in her life. And she experiences what that feels like to experience seeing the color red. Now, back to my idea with borderline personality disorder. So, we're going to swap out the color red. We're going to take out the color red. And instead, we're going to insert love. And this idea kind of makes sense to me. If you are in my personal life and you've seen my left arm, you can see the scars on my arm that say love me. This was self-mutilation from when I was a kid. I mean, when I was in my early 20s. Or actually, I was 18 at the time. Yeah, anyway. I have the words sketched into my arm that say love me. And when I was talking with a therapist about it, he was like, yeah, that screams borderline. I was like, okay. But let's push this idea even further. let's push the idea even further. What if instead of love, what if instead of opening the door and seeing love and like experiencing what that is, what if she opens the door to discover self-love? What an idea. And then I think about someone like Ingrid Nilsson, someone who was a beauty guru for years, and then she quit and she wrote that kick-ass article for the New York Times, where she was telling all of her viewers and all of her readers, like, I think I've been doing this whole thing wrong. And then I thought of myself again. I'm like, this is just where my thoughts are and this is where I'm at. But the idea of Mary's Room feels like me. And then learning self-love and learning how to actually implement that into your life, it feels different. It feels different. But again, if this analogy doesn't work, it doesn't work. However, let me just read you something that I was kind of working on earlier today. So the philosophy story of Mary's Room deals with a thought experiment about the nature of knowledge and experience. In the original story, Mary is a scientist who knows everything there is to know about the color red, but she's been kept in a black and white room. When she sees color for the first time, she learns something new, namely what the experience of seeing color actually feels like. Something that can't be captured by pure intellectual knowledge alone. Sorry, this is hard to talk about because it hits home to me. And I was like crying about this earlier. I'm like, I have to film this video. So if you're swapping red for love, I might be pointing to the idea that you might intellectually understand what love is, but there might be a difference between knowing about love conceptually and experiencing it in an embodied, emotional, and sometimes overwhelming way. It's a feeling that can't always be fully captured by knowledge alone. Much like how Mary couldn't fully grasp the experience of color until she saw it firsthand. For someone with borderline personality disorder, this could resonate deeply since love and intense emotions more generally can feel both elusive and overpowering. You might be aware of the concept of love, but the way it feels, the intensity, the craving for connection, the shifts between idealization and fear of abandonment can be more complex and overwhelming than simply knowing what love is in an abstract sense. It's a visceral, deeply emotional experience that can't always be understood just by studying it. It has to be felt, navigated, with curiosity. So, given this metaphorical reframing, just like Mary's experiencing color for the first time in a new way, someone with BPD might feel like they're experiencing love or any intense emotion in a way that's hard to explain or fully grasp without actually living through it. And if we push this idea further with the idea of self-love, here's what I was coming up with earlier. Let's propose a deeper layer to this metaphor. If Mary opens the door and finds self-love instead of just color or love, this changes the entire focus of the experience. The discovery of self-love is not just about understanding love or feeling the intensity of it, but about feeling it for herself, about embracing and accepting her own worth, which can be a radical, transformative experience for anyone, but especially for someone dealing with borderline personality disorder. In the context of BPD, self-love is a complicated, elusive concept. There's a lot of pain that comes with fluctuating self-image, intense emotional reactions, and a constant search for validation and connection with others. So imagining Mary opening that door and finding self-love, not as a concept, but as an embodied experience, becomes a profound shift. It would be like her seeing and feeling herself in full color for the first time. But this time, the color isn't just external, it's the inner experience of I can't talk. Isn't just external. It's the inner experience of self-acceptance, compassion, and love. Sorry. Again, this is hard for me to talk about. So, in a sense, this is an emotional homecoming. If this analogy doesn't work, please let me know. But this totally makes sense to me, and it feels like me. I feel like I've been trapped in Mary's room, and I didn't know what self-love really was until this past year, until I started really embracing it. It feels good. It feels good. So if you're someone struggling with borderline personality disorder and this kind of resonates with you, I would love to hear from you. If you have not been diagnosed, if you just stumbled on this video, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I hope you guys are doing well. Thank you for listening to me, and I'll talk to you guys on the next one. All right. Bye.